All right, so as you can see, I just made a few more tweaks and I thought, okay, this looks good. All right, yours may look a bit different, but that's okay. All right, as long as you have it set and ready there to render. All right, so before we get to the render settings, let's make sure that our objects actually show up in the render because sometimes that could trip us up. So you will notice that we have been selecting this eye icon on and off. All right, these will actually show up in the viewport as you can see here. All right, we're disabling and enabling things in the viewport. But what happens is that this icon here, the camera icon, is what's actually important for rendering. Because if I disable this, for example, this camera, I'm actually disabling this whole collection, as you can see here, right? By selecting this or disabling this camera icon. So none of this here will actually show up in the render, but it's showing up in our viewport because the eye icon is enabled. And how do we know? If we click on render image, you see that's exactly what happens. Nothing shows up, only the background, because the background is here. This actually has the camera icon enabled. See? So the background will show up, but none of those other objects there. So we have to make sure that we'll go through our scene and make sure what we actually want to show up in the render, that this camera icon is enabled. And then lastly, for camera, you notice I have multiple cameras. So make sure that the one that is selected. And when I say selected, this doesn't mean the camera is actually going to be rendered. Not because it's selected in the outliner here. It would mean that it will show up in the render. So if I click this here, this first camera, or let's say camera 001, that doesn't mean that it will show up in, that is one that will be used for the render. Actually, this one where the green icon is highlighted is what will show up. So if I click on camera 001, click on this green camera icon here, then that is what will show up. If I click on this one, that is what will be used for the render. So we make sure that if we have multiple cameras in our scene, the one that we want to be used for the render, make sure the green icon here is enabled. In this case, this one here. All right. So that's it for the outliner. Now let's go to the settings, actually render settings, render properties. Click on this icon here. And let's start with the render engine. There are two common render engines in Blender, Cycles and Eevee. When it comes to realistic renders, Cycles is you want to go to. You can use Eevee, but you have to do a few tweaking for it to look realistic. But let's keep it as Cycles, and you will get some beautiful renders there. Be sure that if you have a graphics card, to use the GPU, all right, instead of the CPU, it will render a lot faster. And to have this enabled, if you have a graphics card but not seeing this, it's because you haven't gone to edit preferences and enabled it. So you'll have to go to, system, and make sure to the top here, whatever your graphics card is compatible with, you select that. In my case, I've selected optics and I've enabled the graphics card there. It will show up here. All right. Let's go down now to sampling. Sampling, you will notice that, let me tool this up. Under sampling, you have viewport and render. Of course, we're focusing on rendering. So underneath here, you want to make sure that you have the right amount of samples, and you want to make sure to enable the denoiser. All right. So first of all, there are a lot of buttons here, but I'm showing you what to focus on. Make sure you're in samples. Where is it? Under sampling, not viewport. We're focusing on render. Under render here, the samples, I've set mine to 64. And the higher you go, the better quality it will be in some cases. In this case, 64 is pretty good because as long as you have like an NVIDIA graphics card, while the sampling is important, the resolution is also important, which I will get to next. So 64 is just fine. And if you increase this, let's say like to 128, 500, 1024, then it will take a lot longer. All right. And it may be better in some cases. It depends on the object you have in the scene. If you have glass, the amount of lights, etc. But for now, especially for this render, this is very simple. Some simple shapes with some color. Then 64 is just fine. Make sure you have denoise enabled. And you can use between optics and open image denoise. Some prefer one over the other. I prefer optics. All right. And let's scroll down again. We're scrolling down to where it says color management. In Blender 5.0, they have introduced this view transform, the ACES view transform, which is 1.3, 2.0. I think yours is set to Ajax by default. All right, but I've tried out Aces 1.3 just to see how it looks, and I thought it looked good, and I enabled curves and I adjusted this a bit. All right, that's how it looks for it to look like that in my scene here. So you could play around with that, and if it is that you want to edit it in Photoshop, just set it to none so it doesn't add any transform when you take it into Photoshop. So I just leave it at none, and that's it. And then I bring it into Photoshop and I edit it some more. All right, so I just adjust the look here, the view here. In this case, I've set it to Aces, but it's not like a hard and fast rule. All right, so but make sure if you edit it in Photoshop, just set this look to none, and you should be good to go. And I think basically that's it for the oh, I mentioned the output properties. That's important. So click on this one, output, and you want to change the resolution to whatever you desire. By default, I think it's set to this, and you could enter whatever you like here. For example, let's say you want this to be 720, for example. All right, now, mind you, you could actually save this as a preset. When you click here, you'll notice, let me just bring this up a bit. Let me bring this up. So if you have set this to 720 and you want that as a preset, you click here and you click on and you click on new preset. Let's name it test 720, for example, and then click this plus icon and it will be there, test 720. All right, so if it is that I've set this to something else, like back to the default 1080p, and I want to go back to that test, I have to click here and just click on test 720, and I'll go back to the one I just saved. All right, you'll notice I have a few presets here, so I use this for YouTube split screen, etc. All right, so for now we just leave it at the default 1080p. All right, this is for animation, frame rate, etc. All right, in your output, you make sure and you click on this button to create a folder and put it wherever you want in your computer. And the media type is image, file format PNG, and leave the other settings there. I think I've set it to 16. RGB is if you want alpha. We don't need that in this case, so we can set it at just RGB. All right, and basically that's it. All right, so that's all you really need to know in order to get some nice looking renders for this simple prop renders. So make sure that what you want enabled here, make sure what you want to render comes out by having the camera icon enabled, and make sure that you have in your render properties cycles enabled, GPU, enough samples. Make sure denoise is enabled, choose optics, or you could choose either one you want. And in output properties, make sure that your resolution is set. All right, the right resolution that you want. All right, and your output, and you click either press F12 on your keyboard or click here, render image. And mind you, what you see when you click render, all right, wow, looks beautiful, really nice. This is the sample count going up here, so it will stop when it reaches 64. And to save it out, you click on image, save as, and when you click save as, you can actually change the settings that you entered previously, the output settings, some of them. So I could change it to JPEG or whatever, or you could just leave it because of what we did already. All right, and then give it a name here and click save image wherever on your computer, and that's it. Basically, you have a nice, pretty looking render that you could upload to your portfolio or your Instagram. All right. Thanks so much for following along with me. I really hope you learned a lot. Where to from here? What I would suggest, of course, like I did mention in a previous video, Blender takes a lot of time. This is a long journey, but it will be fun. It will be rewarding. You don't know which one of the rabbit holes you will go down, whether it be modeling, whether it be VFX or sculpting. Nevertheless, do enjoy it. What I would suggest, I recommend after this, if you're interested in getting a full understanding of Blender as a whole, I would suggest this course from CG Masters. Is called the Blender Encyclopedia, and there are two very good instructors there. One that I really love, his name is Chris Plush. In fact, anything from Chris Plush will be excellent. So I would highly recommend that. That gives you, it's an encyclopedia, so it really gives you a full understanding of Blender. As long as you do that, then whatever you learn, it will always make sense because you understand Blender from inside out. All right, so that's my recommendation. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to teach you, and I'll see you around on the channel. All right, so keep learning and keep growing. Take care.